I don't want to do this. I don't want to go there. I don't want to go in there. Have you ever said that to yourself, that you don't want to do certain things, but yet you do them? Well, this life is about 5 reasons why it is so important to listen to that inner voice. I'm going to share a little story which has to do with my inner kid, Jumping Bunny. And at some point, I took her to the beach. She was on a little adventure and she got all this soot all over her feet. And the friend I was at the beach with, he said to me, well, just throw her in the washing machine. And I was like, well, no. So I made this little video. You can see it on Instagram, Lady Lexi Speaks Up. And on it, it says, I don't like this. I don't want this. I don't want to go into the washing machine, which is, of course, her voice. And what I did instead was I took her to the sink and I washed her feet. And, well, they're looking good again. So that worked too. Now, sorry for knocking you over. How does this compare to your inner voice and to your life, you might ask right now? And here's the thing. Do you actually listen to your voice? When you have that little voice in there that tells you, this is not going to work out. I don't have the time for this. It's going to cost me in some way. Because that's what we're talking about. And I want you to think about that for a moment. When was the last time that you actually ignored that inner voice? Or maybe I should ask you, when was the last time you actually listened to that inner voice? And here's the thing. A lot of people, they are like, I can't do this. I have to live up to certain standards. People expect me to do this. And my question to you is that true? Do you always have to live up to the expectations of others? That's something that you want to think about. So, 5 reasons. And I'm going to start with self-love. And, well, basically, when I shared with you that story about Jumping Bunny not wanting to go into the washing machine, the question I basically asked is, what is going to happen with your inner child? If you ignore the inner child and you just push her in the washing machine and you have her spin for like an hour, how does she get out of the washing machine? Now, I don't expect you to throw your inner child literally in the washing machine, although some people do throw things in the washing machine that shouldn't be in there. But we actually throw ourselves under the bus quite often, don't we? When we are so used to letting others go first or listening to others, they must know better than we do. And by listening to ourselves, we actually do the opposite. We pay attention like, oh, well, maybe I do have a voice. Maybe I do know. Maybe what I know matters. So this is not about being polite or impolite. This is about you and how you want to show up for yourself and for others in the future. And in order to do so, it's important that you think about the things you do. And especially when you've done things that you later regretted or realized, oh, I wish I hadn't. Well, take some time to reflect and ask yourself, why did you do so? And please note, we are very good at blaming others for persuading us, but this is on us, right? And yes, it can be that we have been trained to do so, that it's so normal because we always have been told that we should do it. But it's just like that plane, when the oxygen mask come down, you can say, I'm going to put it on my child first, but who's going to put it on you when you pass out? And when you pass out, who's going to take care of your child? So respect for yourself, showing yourself, hey, I do believe in you, I do trust you. That is so important. Now, the second one is literally trusting your inner voice, as in, hey, but I actually do know what I am talking about. So I already gave you some examples of letting others go first. Oh, they'll probably know it. They've done it for years. But who knows you like you do? Some of you might know this, but my clients predominantly are clients who don't see any perspective anymore because of physical and mental circumstances. And here's the thing. A lot of people, they have their opinions of what you can do and what you can't do. So they might not know your situation. They might not know what it's like to be getting up like you do every day, again and again and again. And what happens when you give in to others, and what the prices you have to pay because you keep silent. Now, do we want you to keep silent? Well, for others, it can be convenient because, well, we don't like people who complain, do we? But on the other hand, don't we want to know what's actually going on with other people? But that requires listening. And listening, especially when people are impatient, can be so hard. And just recently, I was in somewhat of a similar situation where the person said, "You're not hearing me." And well, I was hearing the person, and when we referred it to text message, I could say, "But I am hearing you. This is what you said," and I repeated it. The thing was, I wanted a different outcome, and I knew a different outcome would be possible if they would actually realize what I had been doing. Now, of course, when people are tired and there are things going on and they are disappointed, well, it's kind of hard to pick up on it, especially when they believe they are right. And yes, I'm also one of those people who thinks I'm right. And there's a big difference. I'll honestly say to the person I am in daily life versus the coach. But I have to say that because of the coaching, I've changed a lot. And what I've also learned, and that is the result of not having been able to walk normally for over a decade, is that people, they don't realize quite often what you're saying. So you might tell them something, but they just don't hear it. So that's why it's so important to speak up with clarity and be understood with clarity. And that's what I am teaching my clients. I'm literally showing it to them depending on where they are. So they get a better understanding like, oh, well, I am worth listening to. Yes, you are. And no, people don't know what's best for you. Not always. So you can listen, you can contemplate, you can reflect, but it's important that they understand things too. So one of the things, for instance, that I've noticed is when I talk to certain people, they want to shake my hand. I don't shake hands, I fist bump. Why? Because otherwise you have to realign my wrist. And well, physical therapists can do so, but if you're not one, then please don't touch my wrist. So no, I'm not going to shake hands. And when people start to realize what that actually means, and believe me, if you've shaken my hand and my hand was actually going with your hand and my arm was still hanging down, you'll remember those moments. You'll remember. That's, that's when people are like, oh, well, yeah, maybe she did have a point. I didn't know it was. And that's what we're talking about. They didn't know. And how could they if we are not sharing things? So when we have the inner voice telling us things, you'd better listen because it's coming up for a reason. Now, when we listen to our inner voice, it also has an effect on our future self. So think about this for a moment. What choices do you make on a daily basis? For instance, when it comes to exercising, walking, maybe eating food, working longer than you plan to, so you miss out on certain things. If you do that consistently, then you are still telling yourself, I'm not worth it. I'm not good enough. So if you keep doing so and you think, later on that will change. Later on, I will be my best self. But how can you become your best future self if you don't give yourself the chance to step into becoming that best self? So by saying, well, let's say, for instance, we go to the grocery store and I could say, today I'm going to eat all these cookies. I'm going to buy them and tomorrow I'm going to stop doing it. Well, first of all, then you're not listening to yourself because you know better. You're choosing the easy way out. But the other thing is that if you do listen to yourself, it's creating a new habit. But besides the new habit, I'm choosing what's good for me. So if I'm going to eat cookies, then let's at least let it be cookies I'm not allergic to, which contain protein, which have healthy seeds in there. I'm just listing a bunch of things. But something that actually nourishes you and helps you in the future. So it's not like we don't have to eat. Of course we need to eat. And is it okay to eat cookies? Yeah, sure. But the question is, what's in there? And how does this affect us? And with each decision we make, thinking about ourselves, we make a difference. So we literally influence our future self. With it, we're talking about a lot of important habits. We're talking about things like congruence. So not saying yes one time and doing no the other time, or, it will come at some point. But we are talking about doing it over and over and over again, showing yourself that you can be trusted, that you can have confidence in yourself because you are showing that you are actually doing it. We're also talking about learning to do things with courage because it's not always easy to choose to do certain things a certain way. What would other people be saying? Oh no, we don't want to know what other people are saying. We don't want to be judged. But by listening to ourselves, we actually give ourselves the example and we tell ourselves, you know what? You are good enough. So it's about trust, self-respect, honoring yourself. Like I said, and just if you were to ask yourself this each time, is this benefiting my future self? Would they thank me in the future for what I've chosen now? That's a very powerful question. You might want to write it down. Will my future version thank me for the choices I'm making right now? And that's the best way to see how this works. Then we go to healing. And, well, that's a whole different ball game because I don't know about you, but I do believe that there are a lot of people out there who are traumatized, some mildly, some not at all, some very severely. And when you're traumatized, you are likely to react in a certain way. You are likely going to react to certain triggers. And the question is, if you respond to certain triggers in a way that you have been trained to do, so it's not voluntarily, it's something that you've started doing in order to defend yourself. Now, when we talk about mindsets, survival mechanisms, they started to come into existence somewhere between 0 and 7, and ratio wasn't there yet. And please note that our brains still develop until we are in our mid-20s, and then especially when it comes to empathy and realizing what consequences things have that we are doing. That's when you see young people drive, especially over here. So in the US, for instance, you learn to drive next to someone and you do it at a very early age. But here in the Netherlands, we have to wait till a certain age. And well, nowadays they're also thinking about, okay, you might be able to drive with someone next to you. But the thing is, because a lot of young people don't know what the consequences are, the number of car crashes and accidents are way higher amongst the young people. And they need to learn. They need to recognize what they are doing. And when you go back to mindsets and trauma, then we usually have experienced things and come to a conclusion about what would work based on what we know back then and circumstances back then. But what if those circumstances have changed? You have changed, you have grown older, you have experienced more, you have a better understanding why certain things were done. But still, when it comes to that initial reaction, that's based on those survival mechanisms. And by listening to ourselves, that inner voice, no, I don't want this, I don't like this. Of course, you can be the adult and say, never mind, we're going to do it because it's expected from us. Or you're going to think about it and say, okay, so what exactly is it that I do not want to do? And maybe you can sort of come to a compromise, or maybe by postponing things, or by saying, I can do this, but it's about what is it telling you? And especially when things do not feel good, when there are those warning signs, listen to those warning signs, take them seriously, because they're there for a reason. And I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. When people try to convince you based on their own experiences, but they don't know you and your experiences and your body and how your mind works, well, that's a whole different ballgame, isn't it? I mean, just take a look at how people have grown up in the Western world versus the non-Western world, or what we consider to be the Western world, but it still has a very different culture about what's acceptable and what's not. When we listen to ourselves and we give in to what we deem important, even if it's only speaking about it, something else happens. We show ourselves that we don't have to be that victim of trauma anymore that we used to be. So instead of being scared all the time, we can actually change that by looking at things differently. And we can use common sense. And yes, common sense is not always common practice, but of course, feelings and emotions, well, they can get the better of us. Now, emotions may run high at some point, but then still the question is, what happens when the initial emotion has disappeared? What are you going to do? So what are you going to tell yourself? And one of the things that I've learned to do, especially when driving a car late at night and it's dark, and or when it's very busy on the road. And here's a funny thing. Recently, someone said to me, well, I don't know how you do it because, well, I've always been driving in The Hague, and a lot of times when there was a lot of traffic, rush hour in the morning and also in the evening. But yes, during rush hour in the morning, everybody is literally rushing and you have to decide really quickly. I liked it at one point. I don't like it anymore. But when it comes down to it, I can decide very quickly. But because I'm used to a big city with a lot of people and a lot of cars, it's actually not a big deal when I go elsewhere. It's just that I haven't seen it like that. So I remember that when I was in Paris and I was in this touring car, I didn't have to drive, of course. So I was passenger and I was looking at things and I was like, oh, okay. Out of every two cars actually has dents in there. And I was like, well, mental note, I'm not going to drive ever in Paris. Well, little did I know, years later, I actually did because of a planning mistake on my end. So I had to drop something off and I was mistaken when it came to location, and it made more sense to drive on from Belgium to France than to go back. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to drive on to Paris. So yeah, there I was at that one roundabout with 5 lanes. And I realized that it was just like in The Hague. Well, if you want to go to the right, you just go to the right. You flash your light. And of course, you cannot go through someone, but you can see if someone is picking up on it, and then you go. Basically, just like rush hour. And by doing so, I showed myself, oh, actually, it's not that bad. And when we are scared of doing certain things because we have experienced that certain things weren't nice, then we can keep giving into that voice or we do something about it. And well, I've been bullied a lot. People didn't take me seriously. I mean, in order to be able to walk, I had to have 2 surgeries. And, every now and then, it still doesn't go the way it should. So I have learned to explain to people what actually is going on. And by doing so, I'm showing myself a different outcome. I'm showing myself a different response to how I normally would react. Because let's face it, it can be very traumatizing to talk to certain medical staff. Not too long, I was in this rehab center. And the first thing she said was, oh, you've been here before. And I was like, no, I haven't. Yes, you were. And this was the doctor. Oh, yeah, I remember her. And the first thing I said, she was wrong. And, I was sitting there and I was literally like going like this. And I realized I was reverting into a person I didn't want to be. I wasn't that person anymore. Being a coach and a therapist, by the way, I've learned to listen to people and really pick up on the things that they say. So an active position is key. And when I noticed I was closing up, I said, I apologize for the way I'm acting. I know I shouldn't be acting the way that I'm doing right now. And then we talked about it. We talked about what had happened. And actually also what recently had happened, because the things that I had shared with the other doctor who referred me to the rehab clinic to see if certain things could change physically, they had ignored that I had been to different hospitals. And when I explained it to them, they said, yeah, we don't take note of it. But they could have written it down. And then when they made referrals, say, oh, by the way, she had a second operation. She had a second surgery, but they didn't. And that's the thing. So when you learn that it's okay to speak up, and when that feeling is there, like but this isn't right. I need to do something about it. It's okay to get back to it and do something about it. Well, anyway, we ended up having a good conversation. It wasn't very useful, but it was good to have had that conversation. And because of it, I also was like, okay, I need to do some things with the previous appointment because things haven't been resolved the way they should. But never again am I going to let my past haunt me now, because people saw things in a different light, didn't know what was going on, and then ignored their responsibility after the fact. Now, I can be very angry and upset with them. I'll honestly say, sometimes I am. But this is about what are you able to do so you can overcome that trauma. Now, last but not least, let's talk about when you act on certain things, that's how you show yourself that you can be trusted. Showing is believing. And when you show yourself that you are good enough, that's when things change. Now, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I've been talking a lot about the inner kid and the inner champ, and actually lately also about the inner raven. So those are archetypes, and they are all related to that inner voice. So what I've noticed, and this one actually is a very good example. So why Jumping Bunny? Well, Jumping Bunny is basically Duracell Bunny or Energizer Bunny, depending on where you live. And she keeps on going and going and going and going. What I've noticed is when people don't listen to me, or I am inclined to give in, that something starts to happen inside of me. I get restless, I get itchy, and it's like she's literally jumping or boxing, trying to find her way out. So I listen to her. And when I don't do so, I actually get very annoying at some point, because it's like I can't sit still anymore. It's like something is telling me, like, this is not good, this is not good, do something about it. And I cannot just turn it off unless I know why I'm choosing not to do so. And I can, so by instance, for saying things out loud, for instance, driving in a car or writing things down, you can actually come to a conclusion why you would do one thing and not do the other, or why you would do one thing, but maybe only for a short period of time. But knowing why you do so already makes a big difference. It's just about not just doing things for the sake of doing things, just because it's easier. And that's why I also shared that story of throwing Jumping Bunny in the washing machine, because when we do so and we take the easy way out, it can have a long-term effect on us. And that's what we don't want. We actually want to think about, okay, how does this affect us long term? And, if it had been up to the medical staff, I still wouldn't be able to walk. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have said multiple times, I can do that surgery. And of course, I could have said, well, listen to you, you can do the surgery. Or I can be stubborn and say, well, I know better than that. I'm certain that you can do surgery. Well, actually, I said neither. I just kept coming back, like, find a solution. I don't care how, find a solution. So, and that's actually what happened. Only a partial solution, because what needed to be done still wasn't done. And numerous doctors followed, but I kept on following that voice. And I'll honestly say that at some point I was ready to give up. I was so done with going there, asking, and then getting no, until I found a reason to do it. I found my why to go do it. So the inner voice, the inner kid, when we talk about the inner child, there's the current inner child that has, well, experienced a lot of things. So we get back to the trauma. So my inner child has experienced the bullying. My inner child, so me as a child, I have experienced people who were trying to kill me. It's the way it is. And I've observed a lot of things that weren't good. So I'm still, and I'm learning to change that. I can be like in a split second high on adrenaline. And it's not something I want, but it's something that is happening. And I know it's happening. And I'm learning with each time that I see things happening, I'm learning to respond differently, maybe breathe through it. So when I feel that adrenaline is going up, and well, one of the ways it shows kind of easily is I start knocking things over, I start tripping, my whole coordination goes haywire. So when I notice that feeling, I tell myself, okay, hold on, take a step back. Lately, I've been using this mantra, which is release the rush, embrace the rhythm. Release the rush, embrace the rhythm. So what it forces me to do is actually also breathe in a different way. And by paying attention, actually all the things that I learned once upon a time actually have the possibility to come to the surface. Now, recently I was listening to Brendon Burchard. He has this guy called, well, actually it's a family, Alex and Nick Ortner. They do the tapping. So they give training on in Gross Day. So that's the app from Brendon Burchard. And the cool thing about this is I learned about tapping from Roy Martina, which was over a decade ago. And the moment that they were doing certain things, I was like, oh, I need to find that stuff and see what he was talking about. So there were a couple of things that I remember because it was drilled into us. And the tapping that Roy Martina did, one of the two things, well, he had 5 certain things, but one of it was this. And I don't know if you noticed, but this is about using your right hand on your left hand and then your left hand on your right hand. Why is that so important? Because you use 2 parts of your brain. And we need that. And here's the thing. When I'm talking about listening to the inner voices, we are talking about making changes in the brain. There is something called neuroplasticity, and we are capable of so much more. And honestly, I can get so annoyed when people are saying, no, I can't change, because I know it's not true. And the question, of course, is, do people actually want to change? Do they actually want to listen? Or are they so convinced that they are right that you can jump up and down, you can do a backflip, you can change color and become purple all of a sudden, but they still won't listen to you? And let's face it, we only change things when we want to, when we have a good enough reason, when there's a why. And even when you tell people what their future could be like, they still don't have to listen, and they likely won't listen either, because they have experienced something else, and well, maybe even pride. Or that inner voice has been suppressed so much that they just cannot do it. And that's why it's so important to write things down. So neuroplasticity, using both halves of your brain, but also literally coming up with new ideas. That's why I say we can change so much if we are really willing to do it. And then we get back to the habits and, of course, the beliefs, because, well, it's a little bit like the chicken and the egg. So, do you believe because your habits are showing you a different outcome? Or are you going to say, I haven't seen the outcome yet, but I'm just going to do it anyway? And then certain habits, they start to form. And at some point, it's like, oh, yeah, that's true. It's actually working. But it all comes down to, what do you believe? Now, all of this, I talk about it in my Rewrite Your Inner Story challenge. So for those who have been following me, either on YouTube or on Instagram, they know that I talk a lot about that inner story challenge. And why? Because I have seen how people do not see perspective anymore. I have seen how the young ones out there cannot cope when it comes to internships. And now you can tell me, they need to grow up. They just need to do their thing, zip it, do it. It doesn't work that way. I mean, of course, I understand that it's important to do the best you can and to really give it your all. But if you really cannot do it because of mental things going on or physical things going on, you cannot say it doesn't exist for the other person. And I've seen people who wanted to opt out because of doubt, because they didn't feel seen, because they couldn't cope with life anymore. And I dare you to look at the younger ones, so teens, and see how many of the teens actually have cuts. Now, they usually know how to do it, how to hide it, so you won't see it. But you would be surprised. When we get older, we usually refer to other things, alcohol, drugs, all those kind of things to numb ourselves. But the younger ones, they usually refer to other stuff. And, well, razor blades, they are sort of the norm. And that's why I always say my material is not for people under the age of 16. Just saying that out there because I'm saying it like it is. But yes, when we don't listen to that inner voice, that's what we basically do. We start to numb ourselves because we feel we are not taken seriously. But worse, if we don't know how to act a certain way, then we pass that thing on to others because we do not know how to deal with others. So recently I was asked, like, okay, so what is your vision? What is your goal? And what's your goal with the Rewrite Your Inner Story challenge? Well, first of all, the inner story is what we tell ourselves, what we believe to be true. And that's why I talked about the 5 reasons why it's important to listen to your inner voice. Because that inner voice is basically what is the result of your inner story. It's the way it expresses itself. And when you get that gut feeling like, no, doesn't work, it's so important. And maybe you also get that feeling like, oh, this is exciting. This is what I want to do. How about doing it and taking action and not giving in to, I don't have the time, I can do it now. But actually writing it down and maybe running with it, as in visualizing. How can you make it happen? So this is about believing in yourself. Do you believe that you are worth doing certain things? And I want you to ask that question. And if you have pen and paper, write it down. Do you believe that you are worth pursuing your dreams and goals? Do you believe that you are worth listening to yourself? Do you always put others first? And when it comes to you, you just don't do it. You don't know how to do it. You're not certain how you could do it. You it's normal to let others go first, but yourself, no. I want you to think about it. And I will always get back to that example of the oxygen mask because it's the best one I can give you. And here's the thing, when you have to take care of others, whether it is because you are an employer or you are a parent or you are in charge of whatever unit it is, and people count on you, but you keep diminishing yourself over and over and over again, then what's left to lead? Nothing. And well, since most of us at some point have children in our life, we do want to give them the example and be the best version that we can be. And why wait? Why wait till we are older to start doing things? Of course, when we don't know yet, sure, I get that. I just said it takes up till mid-20s to actually be fully empathetic about things, to be fully aware of the consequences. And of course, you can say as a parent, I had to do it back then too. No arguing. But, it's a different time. It's a different age. People have access to media. And also, we want people, and especially children, to make choices based on what makes sense to them. And if you want them to know, if you want them to make the right choices, you want them to be informed so they can make those choices, well, then they need to get their information from somewhere. And of course, that can be from the internet. But how about from you and what you have experienced? So going back to the challenge is about letting go of the old story, what the people always said you had to do. And looking at, hey, who am I right now? What have my goals and dreams been? What are they right now? And do I dare to act on them? Or is it disappointment after disappointment after disappointment? Now, I used to say, if I can do it, you can do it too. I'm a little bit more careful saying so. But, I traveled for 6 weeks through the US with 2 backpacks and 2 crutches. And the only reason why I was able to do so is because I speak up. I ask for assistance. I ask for help. Does it go haywire and go wrong every now and then? Yeah, it does. So we learn from it and then we get back up again. Last September, things went totally haywire. It took me months to get back to normal again. And then when things were sort of back to normal again, about 6-7 weeks ago, I was on the beach. I was walking on the sand without crutches, with my braces, and I didn't realize I couldn't do it. And as a result, it took me over a month to get back to where I am now. So, yeah. Do I give up? No. Do I say, well, you know what? I need to be more careful and let's never do this again? No. What I am doing is thinking about what can I do differently. So I'm still listening to that voice that tells me that I crave freedom. I crave to go places. I crave to go and meet new people. Not necessarily all these new people, but it's nice to have a conversation with people, see what they're, what's going on in their mind. I like that. And I like to have good conversations with friends too. But I also like sitting quietly on the beach, on the terrace, and just work, enjoy the sun, have a good latte, have a good conversation with whoever is walking around. It's all about what makes you happy. But your inner voice will tell you what's important to you. And now's the time to actually say, okay, let's go change that. Let's go choose me. But that means that you also have to realize what are you telling yourself on a daily basis. So that's why I've made this roadmap. And this roadmap is about releasing the old. It's talking about which dreams and goals you didn't act on, the beliefs you used to have and probably still have, unless you've been working on it, habits that you used to have or maybe still have every now and then, and if you are ignoring your inner kid or not. And then when we flip it around, then we are talking about stepping into freedom. So what are your current dreams and goals? What are your current beliefs and what would you like to see different? What are your current habits? How could you change them? How is your relationship with your inner child, your inner kid? And here, inner champ, your future best self. And I want you to think about that, because what it comes down to is, are you willing to do the work and look at yourself and ask yourself the hard questions? And why is one of those. And I believe in asking why again and again and again. So it's 7 times why. And then at some point, you will actually get to that answer. And please don't be impatient. Remember, the easiest thing is to throw the inner child in the washing machine, let her spin for an hour, or let your inner child spin for an hour, and then you take it out, and then, oh, well, maybe this wasn't the best decision, but it was the quickest decision to make. And, well, if you are still listening to this, then by now there must be something inside of you that is looking for a change, that is resonating with what I'm saying. And if so, why not sign up for that challenge? Why not get that roadmap? I mean, it's 7 days. You have access to each day for 3 days in a row. And, there's a question of the day. So it will take you somewhere, say 10, 20 minutes per day. And here's the thing. When you ask yourself something and you write it down, and especially when you talk with someone else about it, then you will see that you may only spend an actual 5 minutes, but you keep going on and on and on and on during the day. And at some point it will get back. So like with the tapping from Roy Martina, I just showed you the karate chop, but all the other stuff came back too. And I was like, okay, so that was back then, and we talked about forgiving myself and choosing, and I may not know how certain things work, but, I might as well give it a chance. And we talked a lot about meditation and visualization. And when I work with people, especially in the group coaching, I do a lot of meditations. So sometimes I do meditation during a live, and I do ask you to visualize certain things. So if you have a few minutes right now, then be sure to grab pen and paper. Hopefully you already had it. And just write down something you admire about someone, something that you would like to be able to do or be like. So do you have some role model? Have you told yourself, oh, this is what I would like to do? And close your eyes for a moment. And in order to access that part, we need to actually calm down. We need to silence that chatterbox. So if you close your eyes and just tap your feet on the ground, so you can actually feel your feet on the ground, and then just lean back for a moment. Just sit back and relax. And then just run with it. So if everything is going through your mind, you can just focus on your breathing. Just breathe in, hold, and breathe out. You can also breathe in, hold, and say, release. There are many things you can do. I mean, you can even count to 10, and then by the time that you realize that you forgot to count beyond number 4, then you go to number 1 again. But this is about just being at ease, just slowing down for a moment. And maybe even put your hands on your heart, because then you make a connection with yourself. And then just go to that one thing. What's that one thing you admire about the other person? And just see yourself doing it. So what's so specific? What's that one thing you want to be able to say that you have accomplished, or what you are like in the future? When you have an idea, and we don't have to do this for very long, this is just an example to get you there. But if you get there and you have one thing, then open your eyes again, just shake your hands for a moment, tell yourself, good job, well done, and write it down. Write it down. What is it that you were after? And then when you get back to that role model, write down what it is that you wanted to do. Now, this might be the most important part of it all. By writing things down, by acknowledging what's important to you, right now, you can make that choice to step into that persona that you want to become. But it's up to you. Do you say, nah, I'm not going to listen to that inner voice, I'm not going to do it? Or are you saying, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to act on. And then when those beliefs come back, then you can act on those beliefs. You can actually say, no, that's not true. Or when you become aware of a habit, you can say, no, that habit, it's not working for me. Not if I want to adopt that persona. So my question for you is, what are you willing to do? How are you going to change your narrative? So your future. And yes, that does start by changing your inner narrative. So, are you willing to act on it? Are you willing to do the hard work? And, you know, it starts by taking one step at a time. One small step. But take that step. Write down what it is that you want and look at it every day. And then ask yourself, what's one small thing I can do? And with every action you take, would my future self thank me for it? Well, like I said, if you want to join the challenge, you can do so. It's very easy, ladylexi.com, and then the abbreviation of Rewrite Your Inner Story Challenge. So RYISC. RYISC. That's it. So Rewrite Your Inner Story Challenge. And just, get that roadmap, fill out those questions, and see what it means to you, because you are worth it. You are worth being heard, seen, and understood. And you are worth seeing perspective. I'll see you again next week. If you want to see more things, just go find Lady Lexi Speaks Up, and you'll see me talking about it more. But it starts with the choice you are making right now.